Pakistan says it is retaliating after accusing India of striking 3 of its air bases overnight, including one close to the capital, Islamabad. Both countries have blamed each other for the violence since militants killed Indian tourists last month in Indian-administered Kashmir. Pakistan has denied any involvement. At least 50 people have been killed since the fighting escalated on Wednesday. The G7 group of the world's top industrial nations has called for an immediate de-escalation and direct dialogue between the two countries. Last month's militant killing of 26 tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir has sparked the worst fighting between India and Pakistan in decades. Let's speak to our correspondent Aruna De Mukherjee, who is in Delhi for us. Welcome to you, Aruna De. There's been a press conference from the Indian authorities and military recently. What's the latest from them? Well, in fact, I was at that press briefing that took place just behind me in that building, where the Indian Foreign Secretary, Mr. Vikram Misri, addressed the press along with 2 senior officials of both the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force, the same team that has been briefing the press since the developments began. At the outset, India reiterated that whatever it has been doing has been in response, and it is Pakistan they accuse of resorting to provocative and escalatory measures. The Indian press conference started on that tone, essentially saying that Pakistan had attempted to violate Indian airspace using high-speed missiles, long-range weapons, drones, and other munitions to target sensitive Indian military installations in multiple cities. Indian authorities also pointed out that they had successfully managed to thwart those advances, but noted limited damage reported at some military installations. They followed up their statements with pictures broadcast during the press conference, with timestamps, to suggest that business was as usual at these sensitive air bases and military sites. They also accused Pakistan of continuing to resort to heavy ceasefire violations along the de facto border dividing Indian and Pakistani-administered Kashmir, known as the Line of Control. They said heavy shelling targeted some civilian areas, especially in a forward town called Rajouri in the Indian-administered Kashmir region. In that shelling, one senior Indian government official reportedly lost his life. The Indian side also emphasized that Pakistan was not just targeting military installations, but was also attempting to strike civilian areas and infrastructure. They repeated this point multiple times, stating it was absolutely unacceptable. They confirmed that civilians had also sustained significant injuries due to the targeting of civilian infrastructure. The situation at the moment remains calm. Both countries are accusing each other of missile attacks and escalatory methods, while calls for de-escalation increase. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has offered to act as a bridge between the two countries, and China has also expressed concern. The international community is sensing urgency here. Absolutely, because look, Samantha, we're entering into uncharted territory. This is a new phase of escalation between India and Pakistan. When both countries start accusing each other of missile strikes, it's a significant concern. So far we've been talking about drones and artillery fire along the de facto border, but once missiles are involved between 2 nuclear-armed neighbors, the stakes rise dramatically. What we know at the moment is that the U.S. Secretary of State, Mr. Marco Rubio, has spoken with both sides. In his conversation with Mr. S. Jaishankar, India's foreign minister, he emphasized the need for both sides to find ways to de-escalate quickly. He also said the U.S. was willing to facilitate such meetings if both parties agreed. But given the ongoing allegations and counter-allegations, many experts wonder whether there's any real window for diplomatic de-escalation. Our reporter Dinah is in Srinagar, where explosions were heard. Let's hear from her. We are in central Srinagar, and usually at this time there's a lot of traffic, but right now the city is on edge. At around 5:45 a.m. local time, we heard two powerful explosions that shook our hotel building. About 30 minutes later, we heard three more explosions. Two eyewitnesses confirmed to the BBC that they heard a jet flying over near the city's airport, followed by a loud explosion. We don't have confirmation yet on what was targeted. We were expecting an army briefing in Delhi earlier, but it has been postponed. Overnight, the city experienced a blackout, with electricity switched off, and it hasn't returned. We also heard reports of drone activity and attacks at the border area, the line of control, which divides Kashmir. At least 3 locations were targeted, with intense crossfire and shelling reported. For now, the situation in Srinagar remains tense, and we're waiting for more official updates during the day. Earlier, I was joined by Husain Haqqani, a former Pakistan ambassador to the U.S., who gave his analysis of the tensions between the two nations. The last 4 days have seen an escalation despite both India and Pakistan saying they don't want it. It seems both sides want to have the last word. The terrorist attack of April 22nd was deeply disturbing to India, which has faced multiple attacks over the last 3 decades and feels the need to act. When India responded, it didn't end there. Pakistan retaliated. In between, we've had drone and missile exchanges which are clearly escalatory. The traditional pattern, where the U.S. steps in to de-escalate, didn't hold this time. Hopefully now, President Trump's administration is reconsidering that hands-off stance. Yes, you mentioned that Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, offered support to start constructive talks. What's your sense of whether that offer will be taken up? Hopefully, it will be. It could de-escalate the current situation, but a lasting resolution is unlikely. India argues the root problem is Pakistani-sponsored terrorism, citing years of attacks. Pakistan responds by saying some of the violence is due to India's internal issues, pointing out that the latest attack occurred far from the border and that India hasn't identified the perpetrators. At the core is the fear of nuclear weapons being used. The world doesn't want this conflict to escalate to that level. While talks might help de-escalate the current situation, the deeper issues, India's concerns about terrorism and Pakistan's about the unresolved Kashmir dispute, remain. So while we might see a temporary calm, another crisis could easily erupt the next time there's a terrorist attack or when political leaders feel pressured to rally national sentiment.